Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama
Hare Krishna.
Rama Rama Hare Hare
So we'll now have the Bhagavad Gita class.
Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Vallabha Yasodhanandana Vraja Janaranjana Dana Vraja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Vallabha Girivaradari Yasodhanandana Vraja Janaranjana Nandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Chaitanya Manobis Om Gyanatimayandasya Gananjana Salakaya Chakshurun Militanyena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitanyena Bhutaye Swayam Rupa Kadadmayam Tadati Swadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganat Tamvitam Tam Sajivam Sadavitam Savadutam Prijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Pre Vancha Kalpa Tarubhescha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya O Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So before I begin speaking, I'd like to seek the blessings of all the assembled devotees and also of those who may be listening online. Thank you. So today we're reading from the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, text 71. Vihaya kaman yaha sarvan Puman charity nispriya Nirmamo nirahankara Sashantim adhikachati Vihaya kaman yaha sarvan Puman charity nispriya Nirmamo nirahankara Sashantim adhikachati Vahaya kaman ya sarvan. I'm not sure if anyone would like to try the recitation. So, Vihaya kaman ya sarvan Pumans charity nispriya Nirmamo nirahankara Sachantim adhikachati. And the translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. A person who has given up all desires for sense gratification, who lives free from desires, who has given up all sense of proprietorship, and is devoid of false ego, he alone can attain real peace. To become desireless means not to desire anything for sense gratification. In other words, desire for becoming Krishna conscious is actually desirelessness. To understand one's actual position as the eternal servitor of Krishna without falsely claiming this material body to be oneself and without falsely claiming proprietorship over anything in the world is the perfect stage of Krishna consciousness. One who is situated in this perfect stage knows that because Krishna is the proprietor of everything, everything must be used for the satisfaction of Krishna. Arjuna did not want to fight for his own sense satisfaction. But when he became fully Krishna conscious, he fought because Krishna wanted him to fight. For himself there was no desire to fight, but for Krishna the same, Arjuna fought to his best ability. Real desirelessness is desire for the satisfaction of Krishna, not an artificial attempt to abolish desires. The living entity cannot be desireless or senseless, but it does have to change the quality of the desires. A materially desireless person certainly knows that everything belongs to Krishna, Ishavasya idam sarvam, and therefore he does not falsely claim proprietorship over anything. This transcendental knowledge is based on self-realization, namely, knowing perfectly well that every living entity is an eternal part and parcel of Krishna in spiritual identity, and that the eternal position of the living entity is therefore never on the level of Krishna or greater than him. This understanding of Krishna consciousness is a basic principle of real peace. So this verse is actually stating that we cannot actually be without desires. That's the nature of every living entity, and also every living entity cannot be without senses. So this is the nature, the condition of all living entities, whether material or spiritual. So in the material world, we're conditioned with material desires, but these same desires can actually be spiritualized, and then they can actually be made pure. So this is why we're actually here, is that we have to try and rectify our material conditioning so that we can actually use our desires in Krishna's service. So there's one question I'd like to ask, is that what's the difference between the animal species of life and the human beings? No religion. Yeah. So there's that's one thing, because the animals, they have no religion, that's for sure. But the animals are simply working on the basis of instincts. But something I'd like to speak about is actually gratitude. So Sri Prabhupada mentions that the animals, they also cannot express gratitude, and gratitude is actually something which is very important. So Sri Prabhupada, he says that gratitude is the state of the heart in which devotion can take place. So without gratitude, there can be no devotion. So if you think of what's called Bhakti Lata Bij, or the devotional creeper, it's actually the soil. Gratitude is like the soil, which actually makes the ground actually ready to grow that actual devotional creeper. So it's actually gratitude, which is the root of all good qualities. So if we actually have gratitude, it's then that we can actually express our devotion. So Srila Prabhupada also speaks about, in terms of actual devotional service, it is gratitude. And when you actually look at the process, for example, the 6 loving exchanges, they are all based on actually giving and receiving. So, and these are all actual. For example, when you give someone prasadam, they naturally become indebted, and this is the gratitude which is there as well. So it's intrinsic in all this. So it's actually when we want to become desireless, we first have to at least be grateful. And it's said that we can't actually, to be Krishna conscious, we must, it says, first become conscious before you become Krishna conscious. So we can't just become Krishna conscious if we're just taking everything for granted, because everything is actually the mercy of the Lord, and anything we actually receive is to actually it takes a lot of endeavor. Everything is actually has worked. So when we speak about actual bhakti, this is the greatest work. And Krishna doesn't bestow bhakti so easily, because when Krishna actually bestows bhakti, that means that the devotee will actually, that Krishna will in one sense become controlled by the devotee. So it's not something which is so cheap. If so, Krishna, he naturally has to be able to rely on us and be sure before he can actually give us bhakti. So so in terms of actual this material world, can anyone tell me about what are the four conditioned propensities in the material world? Yeah. No, different. It's the four general propensities which are taking place in the material world. So eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. So this is all on the this is what all on the level of animal society. Mating and defending. Mating and defending. So, and this we can see this very prominently is that, for example, all animals are very cautious and they defend as well, and likewise human beings as well. So we're all like defensive, and we have to. It's something which is which we have to take care of ourselves as well. But in terms of Sri Prabhupada mentions in the purport about achieving real peace. So real peace is that when we actually go beyond these propensities and take to the process of devotional service. So it's only in this process in which we can actually transcend the material modes of nature and then become transcendentally situated. So this is mentioned Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma Nasoshati Nakangshati, so that to become actually transcendently situated, one becomes fully joyful, never laments or desires to have anything, and in that state they can actually attain devotional service and become a well-wisher onto every living entity as well. So it's also mentioned in the purport, though, just to when we become transcendently situated, because if you're aware of this, of the three, Shri Radha Gokulananda ki, Shri Sita Ram Lakshman Hanuman ki, Shri Jai Nitai ki. So when we're actually aware of the actual three aspects in which we can actually realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which is Brahman, Paramatma and Bhagavan realization. So generally there's three different types of transcendentalists. So they are the Gyanis, the Yogis and the Bhaktas. So they can all actually become transcendentally situated, but I'm not sure if you're aware of the three aspects in which we can realize God. So one is the impersonal. So this is the impersonal Brahman. This is what many people perceive as God with no form, all consciousness, God's light, and so on. So this is the impersonal Brahman. So this is one aspect of the absolute truth. So it's still non-different from the absolute truth. It's still a part of the absolute truth. Like for example, if you were seeing a train coming in our direction, and it was dark, and you can see the lights. So you can just see the lights, and then you say, okay, it's all light. But then, naturally, as it becomes closer, and then you can actually see that like there's a train and maybe a driver inside. So, for example, this is like the Paramatma feature, and then the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the Supreme Person. So the Paramatma is the Lord in our hearts, and Bhagavan is the Supreme Person. So these are the three aspects in which we can actually realize the Supreme Truth. And the Gyanis will generally, those who are actually seeking knowledge, they'll generally realize the Lord in the impersonal aspect. And the Yogis will realize they meditate and they'll realize the Lord in the heart. And then the Bhaktas, they'll realize the Bhagavan aspect. And so there's three different aspects. But when we talk about actual senses and so on, so for example, Srila Prabhupada, he wrote this poem to his spiritual master, and he spoke about in personal calamity thou has removed, and something I can't remember it fully, but sentience thou has proved. So he speaks about actual, that's the true nature of the living being. So we can see in this world, and this world is described as like a reflection of the spiritual world. So what's in this world has to be in the spiritual world. So we can see that we all have actual like senses, and we're all sentient beings. But in the actual spiritual world, it has to be the same as well. So to actually believe we are going to become one with God and merge into the light is a not a full realization. And the thing is that it's actually free from bhakti. There's no actual bhakti there, so it's devoid of true bhakti. So there's many different groups who will practice yoga and devotion as a means to an end. So they will say they practice bhakti and devotion, but it's simply just to actually attain what they believe to become one with God. So this is not real devotion. And naturally, if they may be liberated from the material world, but they'll naturally have to come back down to actually achieve that devotion, because devotion is the final stop in terms of realization. And Krishna naturally, he wants us all back in where we belong in that sense. And this is actual devotion. So this is how we can actually be desireless, because desires and senses are everything which will always exist, but they can be purified. So this is our eternal relationship, is to try and be eternally of service to the Lord. Uh, I wonder if there's any questions. Sorry. Okay, so something I want to just speak about is that there was this pastime when Krishna had a headache. So Krishna he pretended that he had a headache, and the physicians came and they tried to actually cure him and find a remedy, but there was no solution. And then Krishna says that only the dust, I want the dust of the feet of a devotee, and this will cure my headache. And so then they went around to like so many different devotees, and these devotees were not willing. They said, if I put the dust of my feet on Krishna's head, I'll go to hell. So, and then they asked the gopis, and the gopis, they didn't think twice. They said no problem, because they were just concerned about Krishna. So that's something which is of devotional merit, is that to simply actually think of Krishna is to not to be so worried with our own condition and so on. So this is selflessness. So this material world, all the way, we're all so heavily conditioned. When we look at the animals and so on, it's all this different levels of consciousness, and they're all so much focused. Like for example, animals, they're simply just interested in food and survival and so on. So this is just a conditioning which we're all conditioned with, from what Srila Prabhupada describes, he says, as time immemorial. So for such a long time that we've all been conditioned in this way, that naturally we're so deeply rooted. So this can't be actually just stopped all of a sudden. So Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita in chapter 2, text 59, param drishta nivartate, that he talks about only by a higher taste. So it's actually this higher taste is actual devotional service. It's mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita in chapter 10, text 8, that Krishna's devotees they receive great joy and bliss from conversing about me and enlightening one another about me. So this is the higher taste. It's actually simply being engaged in Krishna consciousness, in Krishna Katha, and in service. So this is where naturally this is blissful, and this is where we can have that higher taste. And the thing is, because we can't just simply completely give up all of a sudden, with that higher taste and that being the main focus, then we can actually become absorbed, so that all these other things become very insignificant. And that's the main point, because we can either Krishna is Rishikesha, so he's the master of the senses, and if we engage in Krishna's service, our senses can be controlled. Otherwise, we'll become a servant of the senses. So, and it's described as like uh, the reins of the horses and the chariot, is that they'll simply run free and will have no self-control, and that means that we'll actually just be more and more entangled materially. So without actually devotional service uh, and actual a higher taste, then we're always liable to be a victim of the senses. So that's the process, and that's how we can actually then attain real peace and everlasting peace as well, is that uh, to be eternally engaged in devotional service. So Sri Prabhupada mentions in the purport about what he calls our constitutional position. So our constitutional position is to be an eternal servitor of the Lord, and so uh, so so this is an eternal servitor, and this is when we're actually most happy, and it's when we're most happy. And just actually when you think about so when you think about actual the word servitor and service, many people, they mightn't like that, but that's actually an expression of our gratitude and ultimately our love for Krishna. So it's just very natural for a soul, because Krishna is actually the greatest servitor, because he's the one who actually serves all of us. So this is a natural reciprocation of our gratitude as well, because nothing can take place without Krishna. This whole material world, as Krishna says, everything is like, this material world is hung on him by like pearls on the string of a thread. So, and as it says, everything emanates from a spark of his splendor. So everything is simply coming from Krishna's mercy to facilitate our desires, and by the mercy of the spiritual master and the blessings of the devotees, the Vaishnavas, then we can actually have those pure desires and attain that actual that true peace. So I just wonder if there's any questions. Okay. Okay. Yes, Ruba. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. So, yes, that's a good question. That to actually engage in the service of the Lord, we actually have to engage in the service of His devotees, and His devotees are naturally serving the Lord anyway. So that means to actually engage in the service, we have to take shelter of the devotees. So this is the instructions. It's said in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, text 34, that tad vidi pranipratena pariprashnena sevaya upatekshyanti tejyanam janinas tattva darshana, that we can actually to inquire submissively and serve the spiritual master, and then they can actually impart knowledge onto us, so they can actually take away the darkness and enlighten us in that sense. And this is the way to serve. Yeah. And that's a very important point as well, that in this day and age of Kali Yuga, the Lord has given a mantra, He's given a process, which is the Maha Mantra and the chanting of the holy names. So when we chant the Maha Mantra, were saying, "My dear Lord, please engage me in your devotional service." And this is our prayer. And it said that the actual chanting of the holy names, it never ends. So this is our eternal prayer. And so, yes, that's what we're aiming for, is that eternal service. Something I wanted to speak about as well is that the nature of this material world is that we become illusioned as well. And for example, Lord Indra, he was cursed to become a hog, and so he was a hog. He had his whole family, and he was eating stool and doing everything that a hog, living a hog's life. And then actually when the time finished, Lord Brahma, he came to actually to waken him up, or to take him back. But Indra was quite happy. And so that's our condition in the material world, is that we think we're actually happy, but it's not real happiness. I've heard the description that this material world, it's like drinking water from a sponge in the desert. So we think that this happiness, we think it's real happiness, but it's only a very minute relief from a world which has no real happiness, from a lack of fulfillment or a material desire and so on. So it's nothing is actual real happiness. It's all temporary and not very fulfilling as well. So, yes, thank you. Yeah. Yes, yeah. Yeah, thanks. That's a good question. That's as speaking from my own example as well. That like being completely illusioned, and we may think that we're actually doing things properly and right, but it's actually yeah, we're actually illusioned. And so one very important point is, in terms of devotional service and the process, is to take shelter of the scriptures. And one very important thing as well is that Srila Prabhupada's devotees were asked the question, which is more important, book Bhagavata or person Bhagavata? And then Srila Prabhupada said person Bhagavata, because he can do this, like that. So that's in terms of a guru and sadhu, who can actually hold us accountable. And then if we take the shelter of guru, shastra and sadhu, then they will pull us out of illusion as well. And because naturally our mind is going to be very much materially influenced, and in time, through purification, then we'll become eventually free from illusion. Yeah. So thank you. So thank you very much. I'm going to finish the class here, and there's going to be a Gaur Arti at 7 and Prasadam, Mahaprasadam afterwards. So thank you. Shri Prabhupada ki, Bhagavad Gita ki, all glories assemble devotees. Hare Krishna.
Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna
Jayo Radha Gokulananda Radha Gokulananda
Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna
Jayo
Krishna Hare Hare,
Sita
Hare Rama
Ram Lakshman
Rama Rama Hare Hare,
Hanuman
Hare
Jayo
Krishna
Sita
Krishna
Ram
Krishna Hare Hare,
Lakshman
Hare Rama
Hanuman
Jayo Sita Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare
Jayo Sita Ram Lakshman Hanuman Jayo Sita Ram Lakshman Hanuman Jayo Prabhupada 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 Jayo Prabhupada Jayo Jayo Prabhupada 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 Jayo Jayo Prabhupada Jayo Jayo Prabhupada, 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 Jayo Prabhupada. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol. राधा गोकुलानंद की, सीताराम लक्ष्मण हनुमान की, गो निताय भगवान की, श्रील प्रभुपाद की. So all of please can follow me. You can see the line up there, Aarti. This line, first I lead and then all you can follow after me, okay? Up there. की बजायो जयो गौरव चांदे आरती कशोभा. जायो जायो गौरव चांदे आरती कशोभा. जानवी तटवने जागमान लोभा. जानवी तटवने जागमान लोभा. दक्षिण नीताई चंदा वमे गदाधारा. दक्षिण नीताई चंदा वमे गदाधारा. निकटे अद्वैत श्री वास छत्रधारा. निकटे अद्वैत श्री वास छत्रधारा. Singhasana. Chandra Ratana Singhasana. Hey, Arati Karena Brahma Adi Deva Gana. Hey, Arati Karena Brahma Adi Deva Gana. बाजे करताल शिव सांखो ओ बाजे घंटा बाजे करताल Hari बाहु कोटि चंद्रजिणी वादन उज्ज्वला गल देसे वन माला कार जल माला पीवा सुख नारदा प्रेम गादा श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांता स्वामी नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवीं गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशत्यारिणे Nanda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Everybody come on Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Bolo re Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Bol Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Kulananda Radhe Jaya Radha Gokulananda Radha Gokulananda Radhe Jaya Sita Ram Lakshman Hanuman Jaya Sita Ram Lakshman Hanuman Jaya Gora Nitai Gora Nitai Jaya Gora Nitai Ragupati Raghava Raja Ram Patita Pavana Sita Ram Bolo Jayo Ragupati Raghava Raja Ram Patita Pavana Sita Ram Hey Jayo Ragupati Raghava Raja Ram Patita Pavana Sita Ram Hey Nitai Sandhya Aarti ki. Gaur Nitai Sandhya Aarti ki. His Holiness Jai Nitai Swami Maharaj ki. Jai Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivarka Acharya Vaishnavarvit Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki. Jai Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivarka Acharya Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada ki. Namacharya Haridas Thakur ki. Anand Koti Vaishnav Vind ki. Sri Sri Radha Gokulanand Sham Kund Radha Kund Giriraj Govardhan ke. Sri Vrindavan Dham ki. Navadip Mayapur Dham ki. Jagannath Puri ki. Purushottam Kshetra Jagannath Puri Dham ki. Ayodhya Dham ki. Ganga Mai ki. Jamuna Mai ki. Tulsi Devi ki. Bhakti Vedanta Manor ki. Gaur Nitai Sandhya Aarti ki. Srila Prabhupada ki. Once more, His Holiness Jai Nitai Swami Maharaj ki. Srila Prabhupada ki. Nitai Gaur Pramanande. Hari Hari Bol. All glories to assembled bodies. All glories to assembled bodies. All glories to assembled bodies. All glories Sri Guru and Gauranga. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. We're going to have a Nashinga prayer.
Namaste Narasringaya. Namaste Narasringaya. Paladalada Dayene. Hiranyakashipo Vakshaha. Shilatankana Kalare. Heto Nishino Bharato Nishino. Yato Yato Ramitato Nishino. Vahe Nishino Hirdahe Nishino. Nasringamadin Charanam Prapade. Bhavagara Kamalavale Naka Adbhuta Singaya. Lalita Tiranyakashipu Tanubringa Kitavakrita Narari Rupa Jayo Jagadisha Hare. Jayo Jagadisha Hare. Jayo Jagadisha Hare. Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa Jayo Jagadisha Hare. Jayo Jagadisha Hare. Swami Jayo Jagadisha Hare. Jayo Nasringade, 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 Jayo Nasringade. Jayo Lakshmi Narasimha Jayo Lakshmi Narasimha Jayo Lakshmi Narasimha Jayo Lakshmi Narasimha Jayo Narahari Jayo Narahari Jayo Narahari Jayo Narahari Jayo Palan Mara Jayo Palan Mara Jayo Palan Mara Jayo Palan Mara Nitai Gaura Haribo 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo Nitai Gaura Haribo 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo 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 Oh Haribo 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 Jai Shri Lakshmi Narasimha Bhagwan ki jai Bhakta David Maharaj ki jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai Gaura Premanande Hari 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 Bo